imagination assessment type thing. So be praying for him. As Pastor Tony said, he'll be back a little bit later today, and he will be back up here next week to continue this series on Nehemiah. So thank you for letting me come. Bree and I love stopping by, seeing you guys. We've been a part of your life for so long. You know, Bree obviously grew up here. But I was thinking about it today. I think it was about 8.5 years ago was the first time I visited this church. So we've really gotten to know a lot of you guys and love coming back and spending time with you guys. So we're going to be continuing the series on Nehemiah. And we're going to be looking at Nehemiah 6, 1 through 14. I think Pastor Don might have preached on that last week too. But we're going to be taking a completely different take than he did. We're going to be talking about keeping your eyes on the Lord. I'm so thankful we sang these songs this morning. Everything has just been thematically about this. Keep your eyes on the Lord. God is doing something in our midst this morning. And I am excited to be a part of it and to be here. I love Nehemiah. I love this book. I love Nehemiah, the person, the character. But the book, it just captivates my attention. It captivates my imagination and challenges me in so many ways. And one of the things I love about this book is the story, right? Big T, big S, the story. You see, you don't get Nehemiah without the previous 15 books, right? Genesis through Ezra. You don't understand Nehemiah unless you read those 15 books. And you don't understand Esther through Revelation unless you read Nehemiah. It's this slim little book, 13 chapters, right? Tiny little book. And it is so important to the story of God. It is so important to the Bible. I'm a story guy. I love stories. And I really love epic hero stories, right? One of my favorite hero stories of all time. I'm kind of a geek, so sorry. Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings, right? But it doesn't have to be that much of an epic. You know, he has an entire, that's all he did his entire life was write about Lord of the Rings. But it doesn't have to be that epic. It can be, Batman or Thor or Captain America. You know, these stories, these epics. I love them. I get really, really excited about them, even if they have a lot of plot holes in them, like most superhero movies seem to. But I don't care. I just love being swept away by this heroic story. And that's what we see in Nehemiah, right? He doesn't have superpowers. He's not Thor. He's not a god or whatever Thor is. He's not facing aliens. He's not facing a radiation-created villain, right? He's just this guy. He's just a guy that's caught in an incredibly epic story, playing his part in the great epic of a story that we call the story of God. So I'm going to let you know right now where we're headed and why in the world we're talking about superheroes in the Lord of the Rings. Well, if you guys have seen Lord of the Rings, and I'm going to assume most of you guys have either seen Lord of the Rings or some sort of superhero movie, right? So, like Frodo and Boromir and Gandalf, right? Like Superman, Thor, Batman, Captain America. These are all people you've heard of. We're in the middle of this epic story with the greatest hero of all time, Jesus Christ, at the center. And we, like Nehemiah, are invited to play a crucial role in the story that draws from all that God has done before us, right? And contributes to all that God is going to do after us. And I'm convinced, I'm utterly convinced, that each of us, everybody in this room, us as a community, we all have a role to play in the incredible story of God, just like Nehemiah. But when we take our eyes off the author, when we take our eyes off of Jesus, we stop participating in the story, and we start getting in God's way. Just like Boromir, right? If you guys work with me here, in the Lord of the Rings, Boromir got in the way, took his eyes off the goal, and ended up trying to steal the ring from Frodo. So if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, that's okay. There will just be a couple of minor references in there. So, with that context, right, this great epic hero story, okay, put yourself in there. We're going to head into Nehemiah, Nehemiah 6, 1 through 14, and get into the text. I'm going to assume most of you guys have been a part of this series for a while, so you know what's happened in Nehemiah, right? Nehemiah goes back to Jerusalem, they build the wall, and he faces some opposition, and then we get to Nehemiah 6, The wall is built, and just the doors aren't in it yet, but we'll get there. So Nehemiah 6, 1 through 14. Nehemiah 6, 1 through 14. I'll be reading from the NIV. When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message: Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they were scheming to harm me. So I sent messengers to them with this reply: I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message. That's persistence. 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Then, the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written, It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king, and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get back to the king, so come, let us meet together. I sent him this reply: Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You are just making it up out of your head. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking, their hands will get too weak for the work, and it will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands. One day I went to the house of Shemaiah, son of Delaiah, the son of Mehetabeel, who was shut in at his home. He said, Let us meet in the house of God inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors, because men are coming to kill you. By night they are coming to kill you. But I said, Should a man like me run away? Or should someone like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go. I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He had been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophet Noadiah, and how she and the rest of the prophets have been trying to intimidate me. So the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this text. Thank you for the story of Nehemiah, the person of Nehemiah, how important he is to this story. Open up our hearts, open up our ears. May we be transformed by your word this morning. Pray all this in your Son's name. Amen. When you're tempted to greatness, keep your eyes on the Lord. Nehemiah and the people of Israel are almost done rebuilding the wall, right? They've got everything done. There are no more gaps. The only thing they have left are the doors. Pretty important, but it's impressive that they've gotten this far. Just the doors. Years and years of hard work, decades of dreaming, centuries of hope are being realized at this time. It's truly an incredible time for the people of Jerusalem, an incredible time for the people of God. There's got to be a lot of excitement in the town that they finally accomplished this. But have you noticed, whenever God is doing something great, there are always people who want to end it? So we arrive at our first plan to end Nehemiah and the incredible work he is doing. The first of 3 we're going to be talking about. Our 2 favorite characters, Sanballat and Tobiah, right? They've made an appearance earlier, a couple of appearances by now, and then there's a new one, Geshem the Arab, along with the rest of our enemies. So this a group of people, they're trying to devise a way to lure Nehemiah out of the safety of Jerusalem, to hurt him in some capacity. The text doesn't say quite what they're planning on doing, but if I had to put money on it, and Nehemiah seems to think, they plan to hurt him, probably kill him. And they probably want to make it look like some robbers did it, right? And then they don't have to take the blame. So the plain of Ono, you got to think of Jerusalem and Israel. You got Jerusalem here, and if you head, it'd be this way, north, maybe a little bit east, right? You've got the plain of Ono about 20 miles away. And so 20 miles, that's plenty of time. That's 2, maybe 3 days walk. plenty of time to lure Nehemiah out of Jerusalem, out of the city walls, out of the safety of his home, and kill him, and make it look like an accident, make it look like a random act of violence. And it's a pretty good idea. But Nehemiah is a pretty shrewd guy. Nehemiah sees right through this. We know this isn't the first act of opposition that Nehemiah faced and the people faced. We read about it from the very beginning. From the first couple of chapters, we read about the opposition that they faced. They had already tried to bring violence against them, and the people had to carry a sword while they worked, right? But this is the first time that Nehemiah is personally attacked. Those who opposed Judah's welfare realized that the plan to destroy the wall and to demoralize the people, it didn't work. Everything they had tried up to this point hadn't worked. So they tried something different. They tried to attack Nehemiah personally. And if I were to put myself in his shoes, as we're going to try and do a little bit today, I'd probably feel a little scared, knowing that I'm now being personally attacked. But I wouldn't be surprised. It's not like they haven't tried to stop the building of the wall before. It's not a new tactic, personally attacking leaders. We've seen this throughout history. We've seen it with Socrates about 50 years later, right? We see it with Spartacus, a couple hundred years after that. We have Jesus, right? He was killed. He's the only one to rise from the dead. But he was killed as a leader of a movement. And all the way up to Martin Luther King Jr. in recent memory. So we have, and it happened before that. Over and over and over again, when there's a movement that's happening, people attack the leader. Whenever God is doing something great, as he was doing in Jerusalem, it seems that the enemies of God often attack the leader. Nehemiah couldn't have been surprised. But what does he do? He keeps his eyes on the Lord. He keeps his eyes on the Lord. Nehemiah knows they mean to hurt him, and he keeps his eyes on the incredible things God is doing in and through him, and doesn't allow himself to get distracted by peripheral issues. He keeps his eyes on the Lord. This meeting could have been this incredible opportunity for Nehemiah and for the people of Israel, right? It could have been an incredible opportunity for Nehemiah to make himself great, for Nehemiah to say, look at me, look what I did. I met with the regional powers, I made a treaty, I worked through, and now we will be safe because I have made us safe with the surrounding nations. That's what Israel was trying to do for centuries. That's what they always did. They relied on the other nations instead of relying on God. Nehemiah could have taken part of that. There's a long history in Israel of that. The temptation here is to be deceived by the possibility of something larger than Nehemiah was called to do and to be. They're trying to draw Nehemiah to the plane of Ono by appealing to his desire for greatness. A worthy cause, surely. Treaties, protection. But Nehemiah knows that this is just a temptation that Israel has faced for centuries. He's being tempted to greatness. Nehemiah could be the superhero. Nehemiah could be the one to save the day. He could be the one to finally bring about an independent Judah. But he doesn't get sucked in. He sees this for what it is, a plot. A path to destruction, and he keeps his eyes on the Lord. When you're tempted to greatness, keep your eyes on the Lord. And so, the first plan doesn't work, but that's not the end of the story. Our old enemies, Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arabian, they try and go about things a different way. If we can't tempt him to greatness, if we can't do him harm, then at least we can discredit him. At least we can convince the powers and the people and the powers that be that he wants to be great. And so we arrive at the second plot. When your reputation is in danger, keep your eyes on the Lord. They write this open letter to Nehemiah. And this open letter, it's in verse, if you got your Bibles open, It's in verse 6, right? And it's this open letter they include in the fifth message to Nehemiah. It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true, so it must be true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king. They write an open letter to Nehemiah that implicates him in a plot to revolt against Persia and establish Jerusalem as an independent people. So an open letter is basically code for they're spreading this rumor around to anybody that's around to hear it. It would kind of be like today writing an open letter and posting it on the internet, or maybe writing an editorial to the LA Times or the New York Times or something. It's meant to be read by others. So let me bring you forward a few hundred years to the Gospels, right? Let me set the scenario for you here. Just like, do you remember on Palm Sunday when Jesus comes riding in on the donkey, riding into Jerusalem, and everybody's going, yay, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord, right? And they're so excited because, he's basically taking this prophecy in Zechariah and saying, I am the Messiah, and all the people are happy because they think he's going to overthrow Rome and establish Jerusalem or Israel as independent people. Right? We talk about that all the time. The same sort of thing is going on here in Nehemiah. It's the same atmosphere in a lot of ways because the people of Israel want to be free again. They know that if Persia gets the word that a serious revolt might be coming out of Judah, they're going to kill Nehemiah, most likely publicly, right? They're going to destroy Jerusalem again, burn things down, scatter the people, send them into exile. And if that doesn't happen, then the religious and political leaders in Jerusalem are going to send Nehemiah out, send him into exile, put a kibosh on this, because they don't want a revolt to happen either. They've got a false sense of power that they don't want to lose. There's this atmosphere that the religious leaders don't want to be stoked. They don't want a revolution to happen because they're afraid to lose power. They're afraid Persia will bring the hammer down. So the enemies of Nehemiah write this open letter to try and stop Nehemiah. That way, they spread lies about Nehemiah. It's kind of like, let me put this in a modern day context. The civil rights era, right? 1960s, you've got a majority nonviolent movement, right? And then you've got this minority violent movement. And the majority want to stop and control the minority violent movement because when the minority is violent, it's going to make the majority look bad, right? If the minority of the civil rights movement is really violent, it makes everybody look bad. And it's the same thing here. The powers that are in control of Jerusalem, that think they're in control of Jerusalem, don't want violence to spread because it's not going to make any of them look good. So instead of getting in a tizzy, right, Nehemiah just replies, "You're making it up. Sorry, not me." And then he prays for strength. He just brushes it off and moves on. He recognizes the plot for what it is, gives his reputation to God, and keeps his eyes on the Lord. When your reputation is in danger, keep your eyes on the Lord. So we arrive at the third plot. When you're afraid, keep your eyes on the Lord. So they already tried to bring him harm, right? That's the first plot. The second plot is they tried to spread lies about him, right? Hoping that either he would feel pressured and they would stop, or that Persia might come down and make him stop. And then we get to the third one. When you're afraid, keep your eyes on the Lord. Tobiah and Sanballat hired a prophet to make Nehemiah afraid for his life. They already tried to kill him, right? But Nehemiah didn't fall for it. So they think if they can bring the plot a little closer to home, maybe they can scare Nehemiah into doing something stupid, something sinful, something that would discredit him amongst the people. If they can't spread lies about things that he's not doing, maybe they can make him do something that will discredit him. If Nehemiah actually hides in the temple, they wouldn't have to lie. Nehemiah's own actions would discredit him. It's pretty smart. Nehemiah's enemies are pretty smart people. There are several layers at work in this plot, though, so let's flesh it out a little bit. Let's get underneath the surface and try and understand what's going on here, why this is such a big deal. For me, hey, if this is a safe spot and I'm being attacked, I'm going to come hide in here. But it's not going to work for Nehemiah. First of all, Nehemiah is not a priest, right? He's the governor. He's not a priest. He tries to bring about religious revival, but he's not a priest. Numerous passages in the Old Testament share the fate of those who are not priests, of those who are not consecrated for holy work, and they come into contact with the holy, and it doesn't turn out well. This is another epic story. This is captured so well in Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark. And there's this scene towards the end, if you've seen it, where they have the Ark of the Covenant, the Nazis have it, and they open the Ark of the Covenant, and what happens to everybody that opens their eyes? Yeah, it doesn't end well. This is a really fictionalized encounter of something that happens all the time in Scripture. You have this text in Scripture where the Ark of the Covenant is about to fall over, and Uzzah, poor Uzzah, reaches out his hand to stabilize it so it doesn't hit the ground, and he dies instantly, right? So this is a very real fear for Nehemiah. He knows if he enters the inside of the temple, we have passages such as Numbers 18:7, Deuteronomy 5:25, 2 Chronicles 26, 16 to 21, right? 2 Samuel 6, 1 through 7. There are several passages that suggest if Nehemiah enters the temple in such a manner, he'll be struck down dead by God instantly. It's a very real fear for Nehemiah. And if he isn't struck down immediately, he's discredited. He's sinned by entering the temple when he isn't a priest, right? You know, there are kind of levels that Nehemiah could enter into, and he could only go so far because he's not a priest. And he knows he'll also be discredited because he let fear get to him. He valued his own life instead of faithfulness to God. So we have multiple layers going on in this plot that Nehemiah has to work through. But he knows if he keeps his eyes on the Lord, if he doesn't allow fear to drive him, if he lets the love of God drive him, that perfect love will cast out fear. I can almost guarantee Nehemiah was frightened at some level, putting myself in his shoes. I'm sure he was frightened, but he didn't let that fear control him. Rather, he kept his eyes on the Lord and allowed the love of God to control him. When you are afraid, keep your eyes on the Lord. I see so much of my story in Nehemiah. I see so much of how things seem to go for me. You know, I try to walk the straight and narrow. I try to keep my eyes on the Lord. But when things seem to be going great, when God really seems to be moving, something always gets in my way. Opposition comes. Temptations. Pride. Fear. Over and over and over and over and over again, Nehemiah faces hardships and bumps in the road, faces opposition, and what we would call in 2015 stressors, things that stress him out. But he keeps his eyes on the Lord and simply leaves God to figure things out. He recognizes his place in the story. He knows that he isn't the hero. He knows that God is the hero, and he keeps his eyes on the Lord. I said at the beginning, I am utterly convinced that each of us has a role to play in this story. Each of us has an incredible role to play in God's story. Just like Nehemiah. It's not going to be as glamorous as his. There probably isn't going to be a book written about it. Even a slim book. Matter of fact, how our world works. 100 years from now, most of us will probably be forgotten, except maybe in a family tree somewhere. That's the way things work in this world. But thankfully, we're part of a different story than that. We're part of the story of God where things do matter, where our role in this story does matter, where we can make an eternal impact when we participate in God's story of redemption. I'm convinced that what you and I do matters, and that somehow, some way, the ways that we participate in God's kingdom building activity, right, the way we live out our role in this story, the ways we worship God and serve God, they're going to find their way in the new heavens and the new earth. The things we do matter. But like Nehemiah, when God is using you and me, when God is using us, we're going to face hardship and opposition. There will be stressors in our lives. There will be bumps in the road. Things will not go as planned. We will be tempted. We will feel fear. We will be afraid. We will question things. We will doubt. And that's okay. But we have to keep our eyes on the Lord. Because when we take our eyes off Jesus, when we stop keeping our eyes on the Lord, we become just like Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arabian. We stop focusing on Jesus and we stand in his way. I've been around churches. I spent my entire life in churches. I know how even the most faithful Christians can take their eyes off Jesus and begin to get in his way. Just like in Jerusalem. Excitement's building. The walls are going up. Everything's done except for the doors. God is at work. People left and right are coming to know Jesus. And there's always a Sanballat or Tobiah. Somebody takes their eyes off Jesus and begins to get in his way. There are times in my life where I've gotten in the way, where I've taken my eyes off Jesus and I've partnered with Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arabian and the enemies of God. And I've gotten in the way of what God is doing in our world. I was tempted by greatness or pride or controlled by fear, afraid of the unknown, afraid of losing power, afraid of losing my livelihood. And I've taken my eyes off Jesus and gotten in the way of the things he's doing and wants to do. Perhaps there are some here who can relate to that, who have taken their eyes off the Lord, who have let fear control them, who have been tempted by greatness. And they need to confess to God. That's what we're all about. Confessing to God. Bring it to Jesus. Confess. Ask God to give you focus, to fill you up with his love, to cast out all fear and all pride. And you can do that at the altars, of course. I've heard it said many times, the altars are a place of conversation, not condemnation. Pray in your own seat. But confess to God. Speak to God this morning. For others, perhaps you see yourself in Nehemiah's place. You're amongst the people who are doing God's will, who are participating faithfully in the incredible plan, and the incredible things God's doing for the community. But you've been discouraged lately. You're trying to keep your eyes on the Lord, but you're getting discouraged because of the opposition, the temptation you've been facing. Perhaps the temptation is pride or greatness, like Nehemiah. And you need to keep your eyes on Jesus and be reminded that you're not the superhero. It's simply your job to participate in God's plan and not get ahead of what God's doing. Jesus is a superhero. We simply keep our eyes on him, partner with him as he saves the world. Perhaps you're being personally attacked. Perhaps your reputation is going down the drain for godly reasons. The respect you once commanded among your friends and neighbors has disappeared, and you don't know what's going on. You're just trying to do God's will, and it's just costing you more than you thought it would. Keep your eyes on Jesus. He is where we find our identity, and he is one who defines our reputation. Or perhaps you're immersed in fear. Fear of the unknown. Fear of change. Of new things. Fear of loss. Fear of your livelihood. Legitimate fears. But this fear is beginning to drive you towards sin. It's beginning to drive you towards self-centeredness. Keep your eyes on Jesus. Because when his love fills us up, There's no more room for fear. All that fear is driven out. We're controlled by a different reality. We're controlled by submission to Jesus Christ. I'd invite you also to find a place of prayer at the altar and just see. Give your worries to Jesus. Give your fears to Jesus. Give your temptations to Jesus. And then when you give them up and you ask God to fill you up, it's a pretty incredible thing. Let God's holy love fill you in that now empty space where your worries and your fears and your anxieties once were. So we're going to sing a song. We're going to sing the song that we opened with today. On Christ the solid rock I stand, because he is our solid rock. And when we focus on him, those peripheral issues get driven away. They don't matter anymore. So use this time, sing, pray, confess, and then I'll close us in prayer.